The Louisville Cardinals will defeat the SMU Mustangs on Saturday.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, welcome into this special Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I want to personally take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Joining me for his weekly show or weekly appearance on the show is my friend G Money, Grant Mulligan, football analyst for stateoflouisville.com. G, what's going on, man?
Coming off a disappointing one.
Sorry, I had you muted, but I heard you coming off of a disappointed one. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's all that matters. That's my main point. It's great to be back on the show this week, coming off a disappointing loss where we had a lot of, quite frankly, self-inflicted wounds. Felt like that was one we should have come away from. We beat ourselves. So time to right the ship against SMU.
It really is time to right the ship, and I do think that the Cardinals are going to do so. We'll explain keys to victory coming up shortly. We'll have 2 segments of buy-sell, one buy-sell for each of us in each segment. The first segment will be FanDuel props. FanDuel is one of the title sponsors of the show. Shout out to G Money for the idea. And the second one is just going to be the regular buy-sell. I have to say, I think I won the last one.
You did.
If Grant can bounce back. But Grant, as you look at this matchup against SMU, Cardinals are currently a 7.5-point favorite according to FanDuel. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Okay, I've got one thing for offense and one thing for defense as to what it's going to take to beat this team. Because early in the season with SMU, with Preston Stone, they looked much more beatable. And that really came as a surprise to me because I thought Preston Stone, and I had him in my top 5 quarterbacks in the ACC ranking. Clearly that wasn't the case. He fell off a cliff, doesn't start anymore. But now that they have a new quarterback in place who has played for the last few games, and Kevin Jennings, they feel like they are a team with a much more defined identity. They're much smoother. They're a much tougher threat than they have been early in that season. So the biggest thing, though, isn't the quarterback play. Kevin Jennings, if you watch any of the SMU games this year, you will know that their biggest threat is running back Brashard Smith. Okay, he's a guy who has over 500 rushing yards on the season, 7 touchdowns. He's been a pass-catching back for most of his career thus far. We got to look out for him in that way as well. But the biggest point about him is he's averaging over 7 yards a carry. This is an explosive run game. So the first key to victory, if we're going to do it on the defensive end, we have to contain the run game. Not just for the run game's sake, as they have a very explosive run game, and this quarterback is more mobile than the aforementioned Preston Stone, who we were preparing for to start the season. Kevin Jennings is a much more capable runner, but they benefit a ton, and they love to use play-action game with Kevin Jennings. And he's the kind of guy, he has not turned the ball over a lot in limited opportunities in his career. He's safe with the ball. They like to lean on the run game and take play-action shots. We have to be disciplined. We have to mind our gaps. We have to attack the run game. And then I'll let you cut in, and then I'll talk about my other side of the coin. I don't just want to be a –
No, you're fine. I think that's a really good spot, to kind of hand it off to me, no pun intended. But when Kevin Jennings was brought in to be the stabilizer for this offense, the consistency and continuity sort of kickstarted the offense because Rhett Lashley can scheme probably with the best of them in this conference. He's a really good offensive mind. I think that the key to the game defensively for Louisville is what they've done the past 2 weeks. What is that? Give up big plays, broken coverage, just missed tackles, you name it. Louisville has to eliminate those opportunities because this is an SMU team. Grant, they can score, man. They can score, and they will if you let them. I used to think that Louisville getting into a shootout was good for the Cardinals, but now after the past 2 weeks, it's like Well, the more the other team scores, it feels like Louisville's offense has to get out of their own head somewhat. So I think that the defensive key to the game has to be to limit the big plays. We really need Quincy Riley back big time because coverage has somewhat struggled the past couple weeks.
Well, that, and it's not just Quincy Riley who we need to hold up in coverage. Their biggest pass catching threat is tight end RJ Maryland. He's their leading receiver. Yeah. And he's one of the best tight ends in the conference, and he was coming into this season as well. He's very talented. So we have to stand up in pass coverage, not just with the corners. We have to be ready for that play action game.
I agree. I think that it's just a matter of this defense has the personnel to do it. There have been some issues getting the push on the interior, which is kind of weird to me. But overall, I do want to see how Louisville can mix some things up and get after the quarterback, because that's something the past couple weeks they really haven't been able to do. And a lot of that is because of not only RPOs, but the decision just to get the ball out quicker so that pass rush can't get home as easily.
Well, it's been a point that works towards what you said, is that teams who play us know that they can do that. They know our strength is in Ashton Gelati and pass rush, but we've been lacking in outside tackling. You get the ball to the outside quickly. You get a guy who can make a guy miss, create some extra yardage, supplement the run game that way. But we have to be, you're right, we have to be more gap sound. We have to be more assignment sound. That is the only way that we're going to be able to limit this offense, is fundamental, staying mental, engaged, reading plays, making solid tackles. But I digress. Let's talk about
you and I texted a little bit, and I agree with you when you said it. Tyler Shough is an NFL talent. He's got, now obviously the age works against him. The injury history will work against him, and that's neither here nor there at this point. Hopefully that doesn't become a topic of conversation. But, brother, the guy made some throws on Saturday. Ja'Cory Brooks, both of the touchdown catches. I'm like, what? I mean, the Colin Lacey throw, I mean, the placement on some of these passes, it's elite. It's elite. Now, I guess the one maybe one thing that I would say he has to be better at is just the internal clock. He's got to be better in terms of getting rid of the ball. Unfortunately, the pressure has gotten around Louisville's offensive line. But it feels like for Louisville, it's a lot of housekeeping notes. It's limiting your turnovers now. It is capitalizing in the red zone. And first of all, getting to the red zone. That's something that Louisville really struggled with.
Yeah. And I definitely want to touch on something that you just said, and that is limiting turnovers, because my offensive key to the game is turnover battle. That is something that this SMU defense has feasted upon this year. Every game but one, they have over 2 interceptions. They are +7 in turnover differential throughout this many games. They're a very opportunistic defense. They're well coached. They jump routes. They create splash plays. Now they can also be created splash played against, in which we saw the TCU game where that looked like a basketball score at the end of it. But this is a defense that can take the ball away. And now with Kevin Jennings at quarterback, they don't give it up nearly as much. So we have to be smart with the ball, because this is a defense that is 100% going to take advantage of whatever mistakes we throw out there. This is a very, very opportunistic defense with athletic defensive backs who make splash plays. We have to catch them off guard. We have to make well-timed throws. Hopefully we can get the run game going and try to take some of that pressure off of Shough, because once we start forcing things, they're going to go to town. We have to at least stay competitive in the turnover battle against a defense that feasts on it.
Let me ask you this real quick, and I'm going to take a step to the side while I get my dog and put him in his cage. I'm going to give you a chance for the listeners. I do want to ask you, how good is SMU? Because the teams that they've played so far, you can kind of go both ways with this. Like BYU's like their only test.
But I liked them a lot coming into the season, and it was more so expecting it to be a step forward for Preston Stone is what I saw being the outcome of what generated this team's jump into the ACC play. And they've jumped into the ACC play. They're 1-0 in the conference, just like we are now at this point. but they're a different team now than they were when they started the season out of necessity, because what I thought would happen, and probably what they thought would happen with Preston Stone's development, didn't pan out. But they almost didn't flinch at that. They put in Kevin Jennings, and they went for a more run lean play action game offense that has worked really well. Kevin Jennings has absolutely been up to the task. They're a very well coached, opportunistic defense, create a lot of turnovers. So I think that this is at worst a middle of the road ACC team. I would say that we're playing an upper half ACC team this game. This game, they are not going to slouch. It helps us a lot being at home here. They've got a pretty long travel to get here, but this is not one we can fall asleep on. This game might be as tough, if not more so, than what I thought coming into this, and it's for a completely different reason now. So that
number one trap game according to Dalton Pence all throughout July and August because of this reason.
That's true. I still think that Boston College may have that title once they get Castellanos back, because Friday night at Boston College. Regardless, SMU is a good team. They're well coached, and this transition from quarterback and tweaks to offensive scheme only goes to prove that.
G-Money, you know what time it is.
I do know what time it is.
Buy, sell. We'll break out the first segment of buy, sell after we tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the official ticket marketplace that you need to utilize for all your sports, music, theater, and comedy events. It has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite event even easier. It takes out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats. Look, I downloaded the Game Time app, and I honestly feel bad for all of the other ticketing places because I don't use them anymore. Game Time is my go-to spot with the all-in pricing feature that you can toggle on to remove the surprise fees at checkout, to the panoramic views from your seat, or the Game Time ticket coverage, which, spoiler alert, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Back on the second segment with my good friend Grant Mulligan, State of Louisville football analyst. We're starting the buy-sell game. Before we do that, I want to thank you all again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Grant, you want to go first? You want me to do the honors?
I'll go first, and I'll even introduce this specific segment for the fans that have been listening throughout this season, have maybe heard a certain recurring guest, perhaps their favorite recurring guest, perhaps the best recurring guest in show history.
Perhaps the only recurring guest.
The only recurring guest. It doesn't matter. Make mention maybe an elite live read of FanDuel Sports leading into buy-sell, because it's a player prop. So this is the first ever official, thanks Dalton, FanDuel sponsored buy-sell game. This is only a player prop edition. And I'm going to start with my player prop with Colin Lacey touches the ball at minimum 7 times. And that touches the ball, not just catches. So that could also be rushing.
Is that a thing? Touches?
It doesn't have to. He touches the ball 7 times. I didn't pull it off of FanDuel, actually.
That's a FanDuel prop?
No. I didn't look at it on FanDuel. We're creating player props.
How are you going to have a prop that's not even on FanDuel?
My previous props were not on FanDuel.
Okay, fair enough.
It's sponsored by FanDuel.
Okay, fair enough.
We're coming up with player
7 times. I'm gonna buy that. I think it's fairly easy. I think that honestly, 5 catches for 71 in his Cardinal debut. I think that they're going to utilize him more against a more forgiving defense than Notre Dame's. You're at home as well. I think with him even more healthy now, you're going to see him involved in more trick plays. So personally, for me, I'm going to buy that. I think, honestly, we're going to see, if I had to split it up, 6 catches and then he has 1 end around is going to be my bottom line. But I do think that they're going to work to get him the ball in more specific ways that focus on getting him the ball in space, whether it's wide receiver screens, slants, curls, even the short routes. And I know that he is a really good deep threat, but he is a yards after contact machine. So if he's able to get the ball in his hands, the guy can make a call to the house at any time. So I'm going to buy that. I think that Colin Lacey is honestly going to be force-fed the football in this matchup.
And it looked like at times in the last matchup that Tyler Shough was attempting to force feed him the ball, especially down the stretch. And that's why I went with touches. That's why I took some liberties. I apologize to Dalton that I took some liberties with my touches, because my first one would have been either 5 or 6 catches. But I think that this is going to be the game where they really look to get Colin Lacey involved, maybe some jet sweeps, like he said, end arounds, where we just give him the ball in space. Mm-hmm. And I think we're really going to see it open up now that he's got his legs under him. He's feeling comfortable. So I'm with you. I'm buying the over. I think he gets at least 7 touches in this game, unless SMU comes with a special plan for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty fair. You're sitting here and you're looking at sort of the differentiation between targets. Corey Brooks is going to get his. I think Jamari Johnson will be a focal point to get him the football a little bit more this game, as it should be. A guy that you and I are both very excited for. We want to see more from, right? For me, this is a pretty interesting one, because even myself, I went back and forth with this, but I do think that it is very opportunistic. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the player props, especially for Tyler Shough. And my prop, it is a plus prop, so your odds aren't in your favor to win it. Tyler Shough, 3+ passing touchdowns. Now, let me go ahead and clarify here that I do think that Louisville is going to try to run the football. That is going to be a focal point, as it should be. But with Colin Lacey back, we saw the makings of a really good passing offense last week. I could see SMU scoring some points in this game. So the thing for me is I think that Tyler Shough is going to be asked to air the football out. This is where Jeff Brom looks at things and goes, go ahead, do what you do. 3+ passing touchdowns.
I would put it, okay. I'm going to
buy sell.
I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. I would place that because I think he gets 3 even. Because when we look at the TCU matchup, I mean, that was a time in which that defense was carved for yardage, but he threw for 3 passing touchdowns as well. More circumstance, red zone opportunity wherever you happen to be. But I think that this is, in terms of red zone and scoring, I think the opportunity is definitely there. And Shough has shown more than capable to create plays and create touchdowns in adverse situations. So as long as he can keep the ball protected, as long as he's making good decisions, I think that this defense could be exploited, especially in the red zone, and score some touchdowns. I would think that this is going to end up not exactly like the TCU game, but I could be convinced that this is going to be a similar shootout style.
I don't disagree there. It's weird because I do believe in the defensive coordinator at SMU, but I think that this is one of those situations, and SMU right now has it's in the bottom half of passing defenses, and we have a good amount of sample size for SMU. They played 5 games, so we have a good amount of sample size. SMU, I believe, somewhat in the defense, they did have one of their rotational cornerbacks play with the trend of play 4 games, red shirt, and then opt to transfer. So that might help Louisville, but ultimately is what it is. But I'm going to buy that as well. I do think that Tyler Shough is going to get 3 passing touchdowns. So that goes to make one believe. I think we both were pretty even on this. I want you to drop in the comment who you think won the first buy-sell segment. But it's not over yet. We still have one segment to determine the winner of this week's buy sell. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you about our friends and one of the title sponsors of the show, FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans. You can start the season off with a huge return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to look at all of the Louisville player props and decide for yourself which one you would put in the buy-sell. That's all on America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com. And into the final segment of this Wednesday edition with football analyst from the state of Louisville, Grant Mulligan. G-Money, you go first or me? You tell me.
All right. I went first on the last one.
You did.
You can go first this time.
Louisville Cardinals are going to be in a very interesting opportunity to try to get to the ACC championship game. I would imagine that you can't lose more than 2 games. One game might be just as much as you can win or as you can lose to get there. I'm saying that the buy sell is that Louisville only loses 1 ACC game, and it is not to Clemson or Miami.
Ooh, I'm selling. My gut tells me to sell. That's tough. I could, just with how things have gone, I could see us coming in hot and beating. I see a scenario in which what you said is possible. So I don't want to say it like that you're crazy more than you already are. But I think we got, not to be pessimistic, but one of those two feels like a drop. But if we win both of those, if we did win both of those, I think we still lose an ACC game because my mind goes straight back to Pittsburgh from last year. Is that we come in so high and on an emotional plane of come off huge wins. Now, maybe with the loss to Notre Dame, maybe we write that. Maybe we see the writing on the wall. Maybe we learned from the lesson last year. Because I see a scenario in which you're right. 100% I see a scenario in which you're right. But one of Clemson or Miami feels like we drop it, and it feels like Miami to me. And I know they should have lost to Virginia Tech. That's still the crystal ball effect. Cam Ward is so good, though.
Yeah, but they also showed that they're human, though. Like, if there was anything better than Virginia Tech, they lose that game. Like, Brent Pry is not getting enough criticism for some of the calls that he made in that game. But I digress. Keep going.
Okay. All right. I'll give you mine now. All right. This one's going to get a little thought-provoking. I'm going to say it. Second half of the season, final 6 games of the regular season. Want to talk about one of our favorite players. You just mentioned him.
Jamari Johnson.
Final 6 games of the season, Jamari Johnson is top 4 on the team in targets.
Oh, I'm buying that, and it's very, very easy for me to do so. Okay. I think he's already top 3 in receiving yards as it is.
I said targets.
Yeah, but I think that Louisville's going to make it a point of emphasis to get him the football more. And we've seen that the past 2 weeks. Georgia Tech, he had a couple of big catches erased due to penalties. Notre Dame, it looked like there was a focus to get him the ball. And I think, honestly, with Colin Lacey back, it gives him more opportunity because some of that focus isn't going to so much be on him as much as it is the other wide receiver. So, Grant, I hate to say it, or I don't hate to say it, but I hate to say it for your sake. I'm buying this, and it's really not even something that I think about much because I do think that he's going to be involved. But let me ask you this. Could the other buy-sell, like if we were to like kind of form it together, I'm going to go off the top here. Buy-sell, top 4 targets, Jamari Johnson and Mark Redmond also in the top 4. Do we think Mark Redmond would get more targets, or Mark and Jamari to get more than Chris Bell?
Like both of them?
Like, it would have to be because both of them are in the top
Yeah,
four.
so both of them in the top 4. No. Okay, I'm gonna say something, and I promise I do not mean this. Actually, I'm gonna rephrase this. I don't feel like we've utilized Mark Redmond enough in the passing game. I was almost going to say that Mark Redmond has been a bit of a disappointment, but I honestly don't think that's on him. I don't think we're making enough of an effort. And while I totally understand getting Jamari Johnson the ball at the rate in which we are, and especially seeing how he's progressed and what talent he brings to the table, but there are a lot of times in which I feel like is a great opportunity to get Mark Redmond more involved, and we just haven't done it. And it just doesn't seem like he feels like a check down option in this offense rather than it doesn't feel like we're drawing up much for him, which I think is a shame.
But do you think that's a lot because I mean, here's the thing about it is we know that Braum likes to operate multiple tight end sets. Jamari Johnson, like, is this more so because Jamari is becoming the star that we have always thought he could be, more so than like Redmond just being like he's being underutilized because he's the victim of a crowded target share with a budding star in Jamari Johnson?
I think that's very well said on your part. I want to compliment you on that, first of all.
Thank you.
But
because some people in the YouTube comments believe that I can't speak. It's quite odd.
You know, there is some truth to some of those comments, but no, I'm playing. I am a full Dalton Pence supporter, and I don't like it when some of y'all are in the comments being
every
hateful.
episode, bro. Every episode.
That's my job. I'm the one who's supposed to come on here and hate on him.
Let G Money slander me.
That's not for you all. Let's uplift our brother. Anyways, I think there's some validity to that, genuinely, because Jamari Johnson is absolutely starting to flash as a pass catcher. But I think with the experience that Mark Redmond brings and the type of catches that he made early in the season for us, especially that end zone concentration over the shoulder, like, I think that there's unrealized potential there. Like, I feel like, especially whenever we were down Colin Lacey and it was Ja'Cory Brooks and Chris Bell and Jamari Johnson, of course, all taking targets. But I genuinely feel like Mark Redmond should have taken more or commanded more targets there. Yeah. It does not feel like it feels that they're doing more to get Jamari Johnson the ball intentionally than they are Mark Redmond. And I think that there's a role in this offense for both of them to have those designed looks or more intentionality of getting them the ball. Mm-hmm. I digress. I am selling, but that's just because the staff has not shown me enough intentionality in their usage of Mark Redmond just yet. I would love to change it because I think those two could be a monster tight end duo, but we have to start using Redmond more for me to even consider buying that.
I feel it. Let us know in the comment section below who you think won, buy, sell. That is going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here